So it looks like we're heading towards a recession right now. We're recording this in May of 2025. Do you have any advice for small business owners on how to ride out this storm?
Yeah. Don't sell anything that has a tariff on it. No, seriously. I mean, we could even see tariffs on software and services too. So that's a possibility. I mean, anything, literally anything could happen. I'm not sure who's at the switch really. So, we're just kind of battening down and preparing for anything. My advice really is you need to have like early, you need to sit with your team. That's employees, that's managers, that's owners, board, everybody. Different meetings, of course, but you need to be talking about like disaster prep. I mean, what happens if the train really does come completely off the rails? If we're spiraling, if people are cutting everything except for essential only services, essential only employees. What does it look like? I mean, the thing is, it happens in stages. And almost even back in COVID, I mean, it was an immediate, the world is in panic mode. But even then, it was sort of, everyone was realizing, okay, this is starting to happen. Now this is starting to happen. It's getting worse. Now this is starting to happen. So, what we did in our company back in COVID was and we advised all our clients to do it as well, have a plan. Think about it in terms of the gradual progression of worsening of things as they go. And don't be afraid to look at like worst case scenarios. I think having a plan for the absolute worst possible case is a good idea. And we all hope that those things aren't going to happen, but you plan for them. And I think the earlier you plan for them, the earlier you're prepared for those things, the less likely they are to actually happen, because you're anticipating, what are we going to do with this? Right? We're going to start promoting this part of our thing. We're going to start changing our marketing language, because now it's not an opportunity to make money, it's an opportunity to hold on to what you've already got, right? I mean, that's a subtle shift in marketing, but it's an important thing to be thinking about, because we all know getting a new marketing strategy off the ground takes time. So if you're anticipating that this is where things are headed, then you're already thinking about putting that creative in place, getting the marketing team to think about shifting language, getting your salespeople to start thinking about how that message has to change in order to resonate now, because the message that resonates in good times is not the message that resonates in downtimes. And when people are scared, when they're holding on to their pocketbooks, you still have to do your job. You still have to figure out how to grow. And I've actually seen, I mean, it was true for us during the pandemic. We actually had 2 really amazing years during the pandemic when a lot of other companies we knew were shrinking or folding. And the reason was because we were anticipating where things were headed and trying to stay out in front of it and have that disaster plan. Just literally, I mean, we were reading off of it like a script, and it kept us in the game, and it did more than just that. We were able to thrive during that time.
But other than, I guess, people and headcount and everything else, is there anywhere else where you can cut back? Do you cut your marketing expenses? Do you look at cutting back on software and services that are maybe, some are nice to have and some are essential, and you've got to make some hard choices about it? Like what should you cut back and what should you not cut back, even if there's a recession looming?
Well, I mean, I'm a marketer, so if you ask me if you should cut marketing, it's kind of like asking a barber if you need a haircut. I'm going to tell you, never cut your marketing. I mean, you may need to trim and allocate it differently, but generally what we saw during the pandemic, and it's true for almost any downturn in the economy, the companies that cut marketing first are usually the first companies to disappear. They're the first ones to have to fold. If you market through the downtimes, then you're going to be primed and in a perfect position when things start to tick back up to catch a wave and grow faster and go further than you ever thought you could. But if you stop marketing, then the world just eats you, man. I mean, we just saw it over and over and over again with our clients. The ones that said, yeah, I've got to pull the plug on my marketing right now, they're not in business anymore. They're not our clients anymore.
Are there any particular channels that you would favor? Like, do you change up the marketing mix? Do you do more content or fewer ads or the other way around?
Man, I'll tell you, I mean, and it all depends on, I mean, because we're a marketing company, it depends on the service and the product that you're selling. Find a way to connect to your customers' greatest fears in a downturn. I mean, they're thinking, I'm shrinking, I'm laying people off, this is getting hard. Even if that's not, even if what you sell doesn't directly connect to like how to prevent that from happening or how to slow down the demise of a company or anything, if you can figure out how to, and this takes community building and everything else, but that should be a part of what you're doing. I think just as a company in today's market anyway, is building community, having those relationships with customers, finding ways of connecting with them. But if you can be a source of information, if you can be a source of, we've got your back right now. We know things are tough. Here's what we're doing, and here's what we're seeing with companies just like yours in our space. This is, these are the things that we think are going to be crucial for you moving into next quarter or next month as these things are happening. We're all hoping for a turnaround, but and just like giving them some help because maybe they don't have their disaster plan in place. We did probably at one point during the pandemic, we were doing 2 live webinars with our clients every week. And sometimes they would go for 2 hours. And we were answering every question we could possibly answer. I mean, we were getting into things that were so far afield from what a marketing company even talks about normally. But these people were desperate and they needed to know something was going to turn around or here's how other people are doing it. We did interviews with customers and they would share their experiences so that other people in other markets that were not competitors, could benefit from that and start figuring out how to change their messaging and their marketing so that they didn't have downtimes either. It was all hands on deck. It was, producing materials and doing podcasts and doing webinars for our clients as often as they felt like they needed to hear from us, as often as somebody would show up. Just to let them know we are staying on top of this. We are doing everything we can to anticipate the best possible moves that you need to make through this. And I truly believe I still to this day, 5 years later, get comments at shows and when we talk to customers on the phone or, they just say, man, I just got to tell you how much that meant to us to know that every Tuesday at 2:00, you were going to be doing a webinar and we could hear the voice, a calm voice of reason and sanity walking us through what we could do and not to give up hope and not just like, throw our hands up in the sky and the house is burning and, all hope is lost. So, I mean, that has paid off huge for us.
Well, that's probably a really good segue then. Speaking of marketing in a downturn, talk to me about Future Now. What is your business and who is it for?
Yeah, we're a digital marketing company. We serve a lot of home services businesses. Plumbers, electricians, roofing contractors. We have a lot of chimney service companies, strangely enough. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a great segment to be in. I love the people that we work for, the clients that we have, the families that run the businesses that we serve.
How did you start it?
It's kind of a story. We were a creative services company, primarily focused on branding. We created a lot of collateral for really large companies. And we had a job working for a Fortune 5 insurance company. Our job was to take their training materials for onboarding employees. They were doing some rebranding themselves at the time. We weren't involved in the rebrand, but they were taking some of their core values and things and needing to create some training materials, and they were doing some live workshops with employees all over the country to sort of rebrand and inculcate the new vision and values for the company. And so we were involved in a lot of that and creating that material. And they would come to us with an RFP and they would also ask, 5 other companies for a proposal as well. And we would just sit and wait, and then they would pick us, and then we'd be off and going on a new project, and then that project would come to an end. But we just staffed up, right, to serve the need of this really giant company. We just hired 3 people. Well, we don't want to lay these 3 people off. They're good people, and we're going to need them again, and I don't want to lose them to somebody else. And so during those times, we were having to figure out how to keep the ship afloat and we were going after smaller local businesses, just doing some web projects and things. When I say we, it's my partner Taylor Hill and I. Taylor was, he was involved in a local networking group, and he was, pitching to them, and we would get some jobs, and we just kind of fill the holes in between the big projects with these smaller projects. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun getting to work for a smaller company because there's just less paperwork, there's less red tape, there's less bureaucracy and all of that in order to have to really get the job done. So usually you talk to the owner says, yes, let's do it. The owner's credit card has his name on it. So you're working with the guy who makes the decisions. One of the companies that we had was a chimney service company. He was a local guy here in Nashville. And when we first started working with him, he had 3 trucks. Within a year, I think he was up to like 10, 9 or 10 trucks. And then he just kept growing. And 10 trucks in the chimney industry at that time was actually like unheard of. There just weren't many chimney companies that were growing like that. And so he had a lot of his buddies asking him, how are you doing this? How are you growing? And he was like, man, this is what I'm doing, and this is who I'm using. This is my marketing company. And so he had a bunch of his friends at some sort of event at his business, because they all wanted to see his business and how he had grown it. And the client invited Taylor, my partner, to come speak to this group. And he just mentioned after the thing, he said, if you guys want me to look over your website, I'd be happy to do it, give you any pointers I can, Well, every one of them that were at that event asked him to review their website. And so he got back to the office that day, and I'm in my office. We had a 4-room office and a office condo. And I'm across the hall, and I'm working on my project for this really big company, but I'm also thinking about this is coming to an end and we need to be doing something. And he's across the hall on the phone, and I can hear every one of his conversations with, I think it was about 10 or 12 maybe, different chimney service contractors. And he's just telling them exactly what he's finding, what they need to do. And they're like, man, I don't understand the SEO stuff. I don't know what to do. Is this something you can do? And so he didn't ask me, but he just pitched a monthly service package. We'd never done a monthly service package at that point. We were exclusively we figure out what you need. We quote a big project, and then we do the project. And when the project's done, then that's it. And if you want to keep hiring us, we have an hourly rate. I mean, typical agency service model. And he pitched this monthly project at a price. And I was like, what is he doing? And I didn't have time to ask him about it, but I heard him do it on the next one and on the next one and on the next. Anyway, 10 of the 12 that were there ended up becoming clients that same day. Literally gave him a credit card on the phone for that product, that price. And we had monthly subscription money coming in now. So I walked into his office and I said, I'm just curious why you did the monthly subscription thing. And he says, because I'm trying to solve the cash flow problem in our business. I'm trying to get steady income every month. I was like, dude, that's brilliant. I mean, you're productizing a service. That's exactly how we need to be thinking. And I told him, I said, I don't think we need to be doing what I'm working on in the other room. I think we need to be doing this. He goes, God, I'm so glad you said that. I understand how to sell this to this kind of audience. We can do this. And so, yeah, anyway, long story short, the chimney service client in Nashville, we didn't know it at the time, but he was the president of the National Chimney Sweep Guild, and some group of about 700 chimney sweeps in the country. And they had their national meeting, and he invited us to speak. And we thought we were just going to do a little breakout session. He didn't tell us we were keynoting. So we show up, and Taylor and I are the keynote speakers for the entire event. We had over 250 people in the room. And after we were done speaking, we went straight to our booth, and we were literally mobbed. I mean, I've never been in a booth where I was pressed up against the backdrop of our booth, people just clamoring to hear what we had to say and find out how much it cost if they could work with us. So I would take breaks. I would run to the bathroom, and I'm in a bathroom stall on my phone going, hey, Jason, dude, are you still working for that company? Because I need a designer, and I'll hire you right now, because I've got clients that are just coming out of my ears. So we ramped it up. We walked away from that show with 60 new chimney service clients, and we never looked back. So it was the scariest time of our life. That kind of explosive growth and trying to deliver on what you've promised is I don't recommend it for health and marriage and all of those things, but we made it through it and we started growing our business. And that was the beginning of what became what we are now.
I think a lot of, because I used to run an agency as well, and that's the problem with agency land. It's that roller coaster of, feast or famine. You get the project, you're making lots of money, you're really busy, you staff up, and then you lose the project, and then you're flailing around trying to find something new. And I know a lot of agency owners try and solve that problem by eventually moving towards software or starting a SaaS business. The other direction you can go in is to productize that service and turn it into a monthly subscription. But either way, getting off that roller coaster is really important.
You've got to stop trading hours for dollars. I mean, you've got to decouple your time from your income potential.
I know you stepped into SaaS. You launched a SaaS business later, and then went back again. And I want to dive into that into a moment. Just before we do, though, the home service pros sector is really interesting. So I have met a lot of people that want to market to them, but they can't figure out a way of reaching them because they're on the tools all day. They're not in front of their laptop. They're not in an office. How do you reach them?
Yeah, it's impossible. I mean, it's like we get calls from people that are like, hey, we want to help you with a cold outreach strategy, and we can sell you this list, or we'll go out and use those great tools like Apollo and whatever to, scrape we'll build these lists. And we're like, yeah, okay. So long as you give us our money back when you can't find the people. And they're like, no, we'll find them. They're on LinkedIn and this and that. And we're like, no, they're not. They're just not. I mean, these guys run their businesses from the truck. They have Yahoo email addresses that they got back in the late 90s, and they still use it, and they don't even know what a domain email address is. And that's like common. I mean, that's common for HVAC companies that run 20 trucks. So it's sad, but it's true. It's just what it is. They're impossible to find. The only way we've been able to really connect with them is by just getting in front of them, and that's becoming members of their associations, inviting ourselves, or offering to come speak, being invited to come speak, writing articles for their newsletters and their magazines, and doing webinars into their things, partnering with the associations to get more face time with their membership. That's the absolute best way that we've been able to find to sell to this demographic.
I think I had Nick McHenry from One Shop Retail on a while, actually before the tariffs. I need to follow him up and see how he's doing. But he was doing really well. But he said one of the big learnings for him is that whole, you read about all this stuff in the tech world, and everyone is on the cutting edge, and everyone's doing all this crazy stuff. And he said it's really humbling to kind of take a step back and realize that a lot of the world still picks up the phone and calls people, and that's how they do business. A lot of people are, driving a truck all day long, and that's how they do business. And if you want to sell to them, you need to let go of your kind of techie ways of doing things and go and meet them where they are instead of trying to force them to come to you. Would you agree with that?
Facebook marketing, LinkedIn marketing, cold email strategies, none of that has worked in the service field. I mean, it works great once you've built a list, and then you can market to the list, because these guys, they don't answer their phone. Actually, they love to text, but you have no way of being able to text them if you don't have their permission to text them. So you've got to get in front of them first and give them an offer that, that whatever that may be, whatever lead magnet, makes sense for the market you're going for. You got to get their buy-in first, and then you have, the ability to really market to your list. But getting that buy-in, the only way we found is just to get in front of them and teach them something, hit them over the head with something that just makes them pay attention. And then, now they'll listen to what you have to say.
I suppose that's actually a bit of a moat, though, because if you're going to these events and conferences and you're talking, they get to meet you, they see you face to face, they're able to come up and talk to you at the booth afterwards. All the people that were trying to find them on LinkedIn and sending those emails, you're competing against everyone in the world that way. But if you're at the conference, you're only competing against the other people at the conference. And if you can nail the conference thing, you can do really well. I want to change tack a little bit and talk about your experiences going from agency to SaaS, and then back again. Can you talk us through that? Tell us that story.
Those were painful days. I just, I'd been involved in SaaS companies. I'd started another SaaS company way back in the day when YouTube was just like barely even a thing yet. And, Certainly there was no such thing as a mobile phone that would let you watch and record videos. I started in podcasting back. I mean, this is all back, 98, 99, 2000, in that range. We saw podcasting as being like a great place to start. So I was involved in a podcasting startup. This is before Apple Podcasts. Everybody was doing it old school and spinning up their own RSS feeds and making their own shows. And anyway, I could go on. That's a whole nother part. So I had a taste, though, of what the startup world was like. And I loved the idea of selling a product that didn't involve my time, that eventually, if it got momentum, could start generating revenue that didn't involve my constant need to fulfill services. So I was addicted to it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I kept looking for ways to make that happen. And I was a frustrated agency owner trying to be a SaaS company. And the problem is I'm not a technical person. I'm somewhat technical, and the older I get, the more technical I'm becoming just because I'm learning things. But, at the time, I mean, I couldn't code, and there was no vibe coding or anything. So I was stuck, and I needed a technical co-founder if anything was going to go anywhere. And my co-founder in the agency is not a technical person either. We just had no way of really getting it done. So I happened to catch my friend who I had started a SaaS company with before. We had run out of runway. We had gotten a little bit of funding and we'd run out of runway and just shut it down. But he's one of the most brilliant coders I know. And I happened to catch him at a moment where he was in between a couple of things. And I convinced him to build a software product for us based on a need that we had in our industry, which is just following up on open estimates. And the guys, when you're working from the truck, you're running from one job to the next, and it's always the new person in front of you. And once you present an estimate to them, you never look back. You don't call them, you don't follow up on that. And so they're missing so much opportunities. And we're like, as a marketing company, we need to help them solve this. And the best way we know to solve it is to automate it. So let's automate it. And so my buddy Daniel Nelson built the system, and we called it Closing Commander, and it was phenomenal. And we sold it at a price point that people were eating up. I think I was around the time that I met you and became a part of Startup Sauce. And it was a huge and fun ride, but it became painful because Daniel, I caught him in that little window between things, but it didn't grow fast enough to snag him full time to become our guy, our technical co-founder. And so he was off to the next thing, and we lost him. And as a result, I had software I couldn't figure out how to support. And when things would break, it was tough to get anybody to help me fix it. That's not a good place to be when you're a SaaS company, when your primary product people can't even log into, or it's not doing what they, are paying you for it to do. So that was a nightmare. And I really struggled, but eventually we decided we had to sell the software at the stage that it was, and it could have become a bigger thing. We could have had a much better exit. As it was, we just basically shuffled it off to a developer who could support it as kind of a lifestyle business. That was the end of that, and it was painful. What else do you want to know? I'm an open book about it.
It feels like, because I'm a non-technical founder too, and it feels like there's always that fear, because if you lose your technical co-founder, especially early on, that's 100% of your engineering team out the window, gone. And you can't run a software business if you don't have anyone who can build and maintain the software.
Yeah, and we were in the position of like having to run out and get people off of Upwork and Indeed, and just trying to find any way of just keeping it limping along. And the problem as a non-technical co-founder is knowing how to manage a contractor who's a developer. You speak totally different languages. I'm speaking the language of, business model and, just everything that needs to happen in order to make this work so we can keep selling it and supporting the people. And he's talking servers and DevOps and, Google APIs. And I'm just like, just make it work. I mean, come on. And so there was such a disconnect, and I really had trouble finding somebody that I could partner well with that wore both of those hats and could see and translate my business speak into code. I decided then I'm not going to do that again. And so I started pursuing more no code solutions for our problems. And And now vibe coding, because I mean everybody's vibe coding, and it's pretty much awesome.
In saying that, I think there's a lot of value in a non-technical founder kind of being given that baptism of fire and having to get a bit more technical, because I guarantee you're a lot more technical now for having had that experience and being able to do the vibe coding stuff, being able to work with no code tools, even if
I'm
you're
still dangerous.
yeah, exactly. You know how to handle yourself. You're not going to sit down and start coding something from scratch, but you understand the process and what goes into it a lot more now.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I can have those early discussions about the architecture of what we need to build, and even talk about platforms and things that might be a good way to do it. Of course, again, we're looking at things that we can use existing products and then integrate those things together in order to make our solutions for our clients. We avoid a lot of the really in-depth, deep development stuff completely. I mean, we finally have in this merger, we finally got a full-time developer. Even most of the stuff that he does is figuring out how to create integrations between the client's product and our solution for something and get those things talking.
I'm going to ask you about the merger, by the way, fist bump for that. I'm going to talk to you about the merger in just a moment. Just before we move on from the transition from from agency into SaaS, one of the questions that comes up a lot is how do you juggle both of those things at the same time? Because you've still got to keep the agency running. You've still got to keep those clients happy. You've still got to deliver on that promise while you're getting the software business up and running. How were you and your co-founder splitting your time? Did you have the same team members, spending half the week on this and half the week? Like, how do you manage that?
We tried a lot of different things, trying to figure out how to do it. Divide and conquer. That didn't work. So then it was all hands on deck and everybody doing a little bit of everything, and that didn't work. I mean, it was honestly, we didn't figure it out. I'll say this. And this is probably going to be controversial. Well, first of all, let me say this. I think every company has a DNA, right? I mean, I think every company, the DNA probably comes from the top, from the owners, the founders. They just have a vision for what they see the company needs to be about. And they have a way of executing that based on the values that they have and the thing, and so that just trickles down into your team. So your team ends up with this DNA. This identity. And if your identity is service, I do not think that team is going to do well in a product SaaS environment. I don't think that they can become that. I just don't think it's in their DNA. It's like asking a platypus to become an octopus. It's just not going to happen. So that's my personal. I mean, feel free to change my mind. I think it's a bridge too far. I think it's too complicated to do, and that's where we kept hitting up against it. Here's the problem with us. We are a service DNA company. I mean, that's we eat, sleep, and breathe, taking care of our clients, making them feel like a big fish in a small pond, concierge level kind of touch, and we start selling software, and you're selling it $147 a company, a month, and you can sell a lot of them, but every one of that you sell them to, because we started selling it directly to the clients that we already had, who were experiencing that high touch service, DNA, and now they're expecting that with the software. And there's no way you can scale that kind of software at $147 a month, and offer the kind of high touch, relationship driven approach that they're expecting. It doesn't work. So we ended up screwing up a lot of our client relationships because they didn't feel like they were being taken care of. They didn't feel like they were getting our attention. And then in order to prevent that from happening, we started giving them all of our love and attention, and we had no time to go sell and scale. So those were, I mean, on top of the fact that we lost a developer and, our technical co-founder, that was the other problem. But yeah, I just don't think that they're compatible. I think if you do service really well, but productize it as best you can. And that can be selling products as part of what you offer to fulfill the services that you're on the hook for. I recommend that, and that's what we're doing, and it's working really well. But I don't think that we would ever say, okay, we're done with service. We're now a product SaaS company. We're selling this thing for this price. If people need help, there's a knowledge base and AI chat in our app. and that's the methods that they have to get a hold of us. And they, we're just gonna. I don't think I could ever do that. It's not in our DNA, and I don't think I could lead a company successfully that was purely product. So that's my take.
I was talking to Rand. I interviewed Rand Fishkin. Actually, put that episode up. Should be coming out pretty soon. I talked to him yesterday, and he was talking about the idea that if you're funded, you kind of get railroaded into a specific business model. But if you're bootstrapped, you've got a bit of flexibility about building the business that you want to build for. And he was talking about when they started SparkToro, they could have done demos, they probably could have sold to enterprise, but that's not the business that he wanted to build. So as a result of that, okay, he went with a freemium model, focused on small and medium-sized businesses because that was the market that he knew well. One thing he brought up that was interesting is that when so Moz used to be a consulting business or an agency, and then they flipped into being a software business. And one of the things that he brought up is that when they launched the software, they reached the same amount of revenue that they were making from the service business within about 3 months of launching the software business. So they knew they were off to the races when they launched SEO Moz at the time. But what he went on and he said that, it doesn't come up as often, is that he spent about 5 years building up that audience. And I think that's maybe a big advantage of going from an agency into a SaaS business, is that you've got this big ready audience of people, and you understand them and you've seen their problems, and you know exactly how to solve them with a bit of software. But one thing that you brought up just then that I don't think I've heard anyone talk about before is if you've got a whole lot of agency customers that are used to a certain level of service and have a certain level of expectation in terms of contact time and concierge level service, but then you're selling them a $147 a month software product, you can't meet that same expectation.
I guarantee you get to that point where there's equivalence in terms of monthly recurring revenue between service and SaaS. If you decide to go SaaS and never look back, you're going to burn the bridges with your service business. You're gonna screw some of those clients over, and you just got to be okay with it. And some of them are gonna never be your friends again. But you can't straddle both worlds, not for long, and be happy. I mean, I was miserable trying to do both. It just didn't work. And I guarantee you, if I can't wait to hear the interview with Rand. I think tremendous. I have a lot of respect for him and what he's done, both with Mozilla as well. With Moz as well as SparkToro, and but I guarantee there was a point where they had to make the decision to sever the agency model and the revenue that was coming from that in order to just 100% double down on the product.
I wonder what's involved in kind of rewiring your DNA as you're talking about it, because the people that you hire, the founders themselves, the processes that you take, the customers that you go after, like everything feels fundamentally different. And you're right, you probably, you can't juggle both, and you're probably better off pick one and go all in on that one rather than doing a bad job of spreading yourself too thin across two or three different things.
Yeah. And then we did try to silo it, and, I was on the product side and Taylor, my partner, was on the service side, but I kept getting pulled back over into the service side because, I helped grow that business, and it I had relationships with our clients. We had 100 something clients, and easily 70-80% of them wanted to talk to me occasionally. And so I would get pulled into special projects and consulting and organizing our team around strategy for various clients. And that was all time that I didn't have in the product side.
What are the biggest differences between marketing and selling a service versus marketing and selling software?
Well, I think probably it's going to come down a lot to the kind of product it is, in terms of the differences. But my experience with selling services is I'm very relationship driven, very, very consultative in the way that we approach a client. I ask more questions during our first hour in the meeting than telling them anything about what we do. I just want to know about their business. I want to hear what their struggles are. I want to find out how they're trying to solve those problems, and what their growth plans are, what their strategies are, what they've tried that has worked and what they've tried that hasn't worked, and what the things are that they hate about the last company they worked for, and why are they talking with us. It's just nothing but questions. And that's the way I sell, is by asking questions. And I get to do a lot of cool stuff with that and use a lot of, you know, psychological anchoring. And I mean, we maybe talk about that later, but you can sell really big things in service packages when somebody feels like they are being heard. Like, finally, a vendor who just wants to hear about what I've built and how I did it, and the problems that I'm having and how they might be able to solve those problems. And they know that eventually we're going to get around to talking about those things and the price tag on it. But by the time we get around to that, they're so just swimming in the love, you know? I mean, it's almost been a counseling session. You know, we've talked about things that range far away from the marketing services that we're going to provide. But that's the thing about marketing, is it touches on every single aspect of a business. There's no way to talk about marketing without talking about operations or sales or any aspect of the business. So that's my approach. You can't do that with, I mean, if you're doing software demos all day, then it's line them up, knock them down, and you got to get 8 or 9 of them done in a day. You don't have an hour just to talk about, you know, how did it work when you had to fire your sister? I mean, that's got to be tough. You know, I mean, you don't have time for that. So that's the difference.
One of the things I found really difficult when I was running an agency is, first of all, everyone's been burnt by a shitty agency before. Everyone's hired someone that just failed to deliver or overpromised, and you know,
most of them are shit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But if you know, I've been on both sides of this, and you know, you probably have too. It's like, from the outside looking in, how do you know if an agency's good or not? How can you tell if this one's better than that one, or this agency's charging more? Does that mean they're better, or does that mean I'm getting ripped off? Or so, do you have any, you know, I guess for some of the agency owners or any service business owners that are watching this or listening to this, do you have any advice about how to explain or how to sell something that is a little bit intangible? You can't really see it or touch it or feel it, like a service or even like some software products?
Well, I think everything you can do to make it more tangible is, you know, time spent in the right direction. I think that's part of the reason that marketing companies have such crappy reputations, is they promise everything and don't want any accountability for delivering it, and can't point to any report or, you know, metric and say, this is what we delivered for you. And so I think that's the reason for a lot of the frustration. But it's only part of the reason. I mean, I think even anecdotally, most customers who work with a marketing company, even if they don't look at a report, they know if their phone is ringing. I mean, they know if their business is growing. They know that people who talk to them are mentioning things that they saw in an ad or, you know, in the marketing that you helped them create to market their business. So that anecdotal proof can be enough, but you know, I mean, I think ultimately having that proof is necessary. We do, as a company, we strive for that, and our metrics are getting better all the time. What we find, though, is that in our market, in service companies, after they trust you, they don't care about the reports anymore, and they rarely even look at them. I mean, we put tracking on our reports for a while to see how many of those reports actually got opened. It's a shameful number. I mean, I wish our clients were more involved, but they're not. But the reason that they're not is because they trust us. I guarantee you, if they didn't trust us, they'd be all up in our shit all the time, asking for reports and wanting to know what we've done for them, and wanting to make sure that we're paying attention to their account.
That's always the thing, isn't it? Because if the phone's ringing, if there are lots of new customers coming in, you're doing your job, and they can see it, they can feel it, like it all happens. But yeah, if you're trying to work on something that maybe takes a little bit longer to deliver, you've got that awkward period where I'm working on it. Trust me, it's coming. It'll happen. Do you have any advice on if someone's in an industry where it does take a little bit of time to get going? I know this is notorious in the SEO world, where clients will come in and, you know, day 2, why am I not at the top of the first page of Google? Why am I not getting 100,000 hits a month? What's happened now? And you've got to be able to explain that it's a bit of a longer game.
It takes time. Yeah.
How do you approach that?
No results guaranteed and all of that. Yeah, we have to have those conversations. I tend to, my approach, again, because we're relationship driven, we educate our clients a lot, and we spend a lot of our time, you know, teaching them about what we're doing. Not necessarily the technical stuff, like, you know, this is a title tag or, you know, things like that, but we're trying to help them understand that what we're trying to achieve here and working with the 800-pound gorilla of Google, that there's certain things that we've got to do in a certain way, and it takes a certain amount of time. We're not always sure how much that time is going to take. But I learned this in public speaking and in teaching and education is you tell them what you're going to do, then you tell them what you're doing, and after it's done, you tell them what you just did. And I think if you can communicate the process with a customer all the way through, here's what we're going to do. This is what needs to be done, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. And then while you're doing it, okay, we just did this, and we're not seeing a result from that yet, but that's expected. We're going to check it again in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, during that 2 weeks, here's what we're going to be doing. And then, in 2 weeks' time, okay, well, we just checked that, and then we are seeing some movement. Things are happening in the right direction. We're going to continue with that strategy because we see it working. You may not see it equate to business yet, but we know that cumulatively over time, this is going to build up and it's going to become that thing. And it's sort of that, that three-pronged approach, what we're going to do, what we're doing, what we did, that seems to set their mind at ease. At least they know that there is movement and action taking place and measurement of those things to see if a result is going to emerge.
Talk to me a little bit about price anchoring.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, right? So this is something I like to do as a sales tactic. I don't remember where I learned it. It's been in a lot of different books, but it's a sales and marketing strategy where if you can anchor your service to a much higher priced service by just, setting an expectation, level setting for what the price should be for a service that you're talking about, and then you come in with a price that's better than that, then there's immediate attraction to what you're offering because their expectation was set. You anchored it to a price that was much higher. And it's subtle stuff. Again, because we're relationship driven, I don't always do it in our marketing copy on our websites. I don't like to talk about our pricing on our website for the service side of what we do. I will for SaaS and products and things, but I don't do it with our services because I want them to have the experience of getting to know us first. And I find that as a marketing company in a marketing industry where everybody is a rat and they're going to take advantage of you. And that's sort of the defensive posture that clients come into in the beginning. When they get to know us and find out who we are, then it puts them at ease and they're more apt to have those open discussions. But when I start talking about price with them, and they tell me, I'll usually start with something like, well, tell me what services you've used in the past. What did the last marketing company do for you? And they start going through and talking about all those things. And I'll just say, wow, that's a lot. I'm guessing that probably you're on the hook every month for, this amount. I gauge a little bit doing that too, because if they come back and go, no, it wasn't that much, then I can say, oh, you weren't getting what you were paying for then. No wonder you weren't getting what you wanted. Or if they come back and go, no, it was even more than that, I can go, oh, wow. So now I know where I'm going to be coming in. Our price is our price. We rarely flex on that too much, but we know exactly how we need to approach it because we've anchored. We have a number that's out there. It's floating around in the owner's head and it's on the table. It's been discussed. They don't know what our price is yet, but we know what we're selling against. And now I have the ability to come in through consultation, whatever I need to do to, offer a service and show them the value of it and convince them that what we're charging them has the value that is actually probably worth the bigger price ticket that we talked about.
So you're usually anchoring it against the previous agency that they use?
A lot of times, yeah. That's how I tend to do it because it's the easiest number, to pull out of a hat.
What if they've never worked with an agency before?
Yeah, back in the early days, that was really common for us. We'd work with a lot of one-truck guys who had never worked with a marketing company. The brother-in-law is the one who built the website, and the reason they're coming to us is because they're locked out of it and don't know how to update it. That's that sort of story. So there's not any comparison there. But lately, I'd say in the past 5-6 years, almost all of our clients have kind of grown up with us and they've all worked with other agencies before they come to us. But when you don't have a comparison, then you can set the expectation. The beverage industry does it all the time, or bars do it all the time. The common example is you have kind of a good, better, best selection on your menu where, you can get the 12 ounce, beer for this amount. You can get the 16 ounce beer for this amount, or you can get the 20 ounce beer for just a little bit more. And so what they find is that nobody gets the 12 or the 16 ounce. They all go for the 20 ounce because it's anchored. I mean, the price is just set to appear more valuable, and that extra 4 ounces in the bigger thing is what everybody wants anyway. And so they're willing to pay that little bit of extra to get it. But the way that your pricing strategy as a bar is set is, you're pretty much anything after the 12 ounces profit, so you're just structuring your pricing in a way. And that's a huge discussion. And I'm certainly not an expert in pricing, but I use anchoring in that sense to say, well, we could do this for you and it would only cost this, but you're really not going to see the value there that you're needing. What I'm hearing is that, like, if we put you in this package, which is our middle of the road package, that you'd probably be a lot happier. Of course, their upper end package too, which is only, like $300 more. But I really think that I was like, no, let's talk about that upper. What do I get for $300 more? Oh, well, that's this, and this, and you're also going to get a little bit extra communication or a little bit more access, or that sort of thing. Then they're like, yeah, I think that's what I want to do.
I like that. I've seen that work in the, it's why just about every SaaS pricing page in the world has 3 different pricing tiers instead of just one. Because if you've got the comparison, you've got the illusion of choice, right?
Yeah, right. But too much choice and they're paralyzed. So you have to keep it easy.
Well, I have to wonder about that, because I did talk to a guy a while back and he said that whenever he notices people buying his most expensive package, he just creates a new, more expensive package. He's up to like 7 or 8 different pricing tiers now. Eventually that gets too many. You can't have 13. The page is not that wide, but...
Well, we did the same thing with Closing Commander. Instead of creating additional packages, I mean, we would always grandfather in anybody that bought it at X price, but we were constantly testing the upper limits of what people were willing to pay for our top tier price. And, so that package, you might come in today and it's, $299. You might come in tomorrow and it's $349. And you might come in a month later and it's $499. We just kept bumping it up, looking for where the ceiling was. And we did. We found a ceiling, for our product. And everybody does. But I guarantee if you haven't found your ceiling, then you're underselling. You're missing out on a lot of money on the table.
So many founders never actually think about testing it. They just kind of pick a price out of thin air, or they copy their competitor's price and just... that's what they stick with. They never actually test it out scientifically like that. One thing I was going to ask you about pricing as well. What are your thoughts on grandfathering customers in? Do you grandfather them in forever? Do you grandfather them in for 12 months? Do you, because on the one hand, you want to look after customers that believed in you early on. On the other hand, as your product grows, it does a lot more stuff. It costs a lot more money to support as well. Do you end up with a situation where you need to bump people across? Like how do you approach that?
I mean, we do it differently for the service side than we do for on our when we're selling just product to a company. We might handle it a little bit different. I've always been a fan of rewarding the people that were the early adopters who helped us figure it out and offer a service that was worth paying for. So, I mean, with Closing Commander, there was a group of probably the first 15, 16 people that were our first group that came in, and I never raised their price. I just kept their price exactly where it was. They got every single update and new rollout. It just became a part of what they had. And they were our evangelists. I mean, they were the ones that were constantly out there because they're early adopters. They like to tell people, hey, I was the first one to use this and you ought to use it too. So it worked well for us. It's a good, cheap form of referral advertising.
That's really powerful too. And I think sometimes people overlook that. I've talked to SaaS founders before that they're in a hurry to just maximize revenue short term. This is the opposite of the people that never put their prices up. They just jack their prices up for everyone at the moment that they can. And I think it can sometimes be a little bit short-sighted, because if you know that you joined early and you know the product's evolved and you're getting way more value because now they're charging a lot more money than they were previously, and you're grandfathered in at this amazing price. You're never going to leave. You feel like you're getting an amazing deal. You are really happy about it. You've probably got a good relationship with the founders already, and you're probably an evangelist. And I think the people that get really fixated on maximizing short-term revenue don't think about what is the value of having a core group of customers that are happy to go out and tell the world how awesome this is.
Not only how awesome it is, but how lucky they are. Look at the deal I got. You'll never get this deal, but I still think you ought to use the product.
That's awesome. Couple more questions, Carter. You recently completed a merger with another marketing agency. Now, quite often you hear about acquisitions, occasionally you hear about IPOs, but you very rarely hear about mergers. Why did you decide to merge rather than you buying them or them buying you?
Yeah, we were very similar in terms of the scope of our business. We were focused on slightly different parts of the industry, of a larger industry. They had a lot of skills that we coveted, and they had a lot. I mean, we had a lot that they wanted, and there was a lot of reciprocity there, and it unfolded over a long time. I mean, we knew the other owners of the agency, and we had seen them at conferences where we would go, and we even got comfortable enough with each other that if we had a sales opportunity that wasn't quite the best fit for us and we thought it would be good for them, we'd refer them over and they would do the same. We were sending each other business. We started getting together over the years, for dinner anytime we would see each other at a conference, and we'd go somewhere and sit, and we'd almost always close the restaurant down just talking with one another, like, well, let me ask you this. How do you handle, when this kind of thing happens? And, oh, well, we built a system, and, so we were just like talk shop. It was friendly competition, and that's the best kind in my mind. I'm just not one of these people that, is going to fight over table scraps. I think there's, an abundant amount of business for everybody, and we shouldn't fight. We should just kind of get along and party together, because if you do, then you end up with a lot more friends than enemies, and it's just, I like my life better when I work that way. So, and that's how it was with them, and it was just easy going. And the more we talked, it was like, they weren't in a position to make an acquisition, and we weren't in a position where we really wanted to go that direction for growth. And we wanted them to stay involved. It was like, we like you guys. We want to be partners in this. So why don't we just merge? And this is all around the time that ChatGPT 3 was coming out. We were seeing the handwriting on the wall. We started realizing we're going to have to make some big pivots in our business as a marketing company, and we're going to have to do it quick because AI is just coming on the scene so fast, and we really think it's going to disrupt the traditional agency model. And so it would be easier to do it with the resources of a combined company than it would be if we spent all those resources just purchasing their book of business and their employees, and let's just combine and go that route. It just was the thing that made the most sense for us.
That's awesome. Congratulations again, and fist bump. I did do that before, but I'm really happy for you, man. That's fantastic news. Final big kind of juicy question is, as a bit of a thought experiment, if you were starting an agency today with everything that's happening in the world around AI and everything else, do you have any advice for those people? And second half of that question is, if you were starting a SaaS business or moving from an agency into a SaaS business today with what you know now, what would you approach differently there? So big juicy question, but two different sides.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think I used to have an answer for that, but the landscape has changed so much lately. My answer typically would be, if you're thinking of starting an agency, don't start a SaaS company instead, but start it slow and organic. Don't go out and look for funding. Just, build it organically, find an audience, which is probably going to come from your background, a problem that you really understand already that you can solve well. Build something that makes sense in that space. And, it's not the worst thing in the world to just have a software company that's a lifestyle company that gives you, a lifestyle that you can really enjoy. And I think you can do that better as a SaaS company than you can as an agency. That would be my typical advice. But lately things have changed so much, and AI is interrupting or disrupting the software development space almost faster than it's disrupting the marketing space, which was a little bit of a shock to me. Just how well AI has shown up as a development tool and the ability to actually replace a good bit of what a startup would need in terms of development muscle. So now I'm starting to think that if you're starting a SaaS company, you got to be heavier on the service side than before. And I don't mean like become a service business, right? I mean, I'm not talking about living in those two worlds like I was. If you're selling something, then think about ways that you can monetize an additional, whether it's 2 hours a month of consultation, or maybe it's just a 30-minute call or something, depending on your software and its complexity, but just some way of connecting and keeping that connection. Because I do think there's coming a point, I don't know if it's controversial or not. I don't even feel like I'm qualified to really make this statement because I don't have the technical background to really be able to say this. But what I'm observing, and the people that I'm listening to that I trust who are technical, I think that there's coming a time in the next 3 to 5 years where a small business like the ones that we work for in the service industries, they're not going to look to a SaaS company for the solution that they need. They're just going to tell AI, here's what I want, and AI is going to build it for them. I'm not even sure that SaaS has the same kind of future-proof. I'm not sure it's the savior that I once thought it might be for us as a service business, as an agency model. So somewhere in the middle, there's a hybrid, and I don't know exactly. We're threading this needle ourselves right now, so I'm being honest here. I think for us, we're moving away from. I mean, we've productized our services, but we're moving more heavily toward products themselves, software products themselves. But there's a consultative nature to it and an advisory role that we have to take with our clients now. I think in anticipation of the moment that AI can now build it for them. And if we're going to stay a part of that conversation and stay a part of the vendor group that they're counting on to help them run their business, then we've got to understand how to do those things and how to help them navigate that space. So it's becoming more hybrid than before, with an emphasis much more toward the service side. More toward the product side. We're still trying to get away more from delivering hours worth of service to make a buck and productizing that. I don't know if I've answered that question or not. There's not much advice in there except that everything is changing right now, and I think you have to stay nimble. Again, it's back to where we started, the disaster plans. What happens if AI completely disrupts? I mean, Sam Altman had a statement, this was almost a year and a half ago, said that he thinks that I actually have it pulled up if you don't mind. I want to make sure I get it right. I was working on a slide presentation for something earlier. AGI will mean that 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists, and creative professionals for today will easily, nearly instantly, and at almost no cost be handled by the AI. All free, instant, and nearly perfect. Images, videos, campaign ideas, no problem. And he has also made comments very similar to that about development. That in 2 years that he thinks that development is going to do the lion's share, or the vast majority, and he has even said all at one point. He kind of walked that back a little bit in a second interview, but they're expecting AI to fully disrupt the development space. So all that to say, and where we sit in our vector, we're being very walking into it with our eyes wide open, trying to understand what the moves are, planning for any contingency. The certainty window is like 2 weeks right now, and most businesses make plans in a certainty window that's somewhere in the 8 to 10 months range, at a minimum. And most of them, in some industries, 2 years is the window in which they're making their strategy decisions. And we're at like a 2-week window right now. So I don't know. We just have to keep our eyes open and be ready to pivot as quickly as possible to whatever is happening next.
Did you ever get into Game of Thrones, Carter?
Yeah.
There's a quote. Littlefinger was my favorite character. So underrated. I think Littlefinger shouldn't have. Anyway,
The
I'm not gonna,
Machiavelli of the,
yes,
yeah.
but he had a quote that I loved. He said that chaos is a ladder. And I think with all the disruption and everything that's happening around AI at the moment, changing marketing, changing development, changing, does SaaS even exist as a business model in 3 to 5 years' time? With all that going on, anytime there is disruption, there is opportunity. And so I think that's a really, there might be some red flags and some warning signs. And I think a lot of people are going to have to adapt and change their business dramatically. But there's going to be opportunities that have never existed before as well. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah,
Carter,
we're seeing it every day.
are there any books or tools or resources that you would recommend to any founders or entrepreneurs out there?
I'm a big fan of some of the older business books. Not because I'm old, but because especially for SaaS founders, I will say this. I think that SaaS founders sometimes labor under the misapprehension that their world is different than other kinds of businesses. And in many ways it is. I mean, crazy multiples and raising funds on business models that, are literally vaporware. I mean, I get that it's different than other businesses. But at the end of the day, running a successful SaaS company requires the exact same tools and the exact same understanding of the foundations of what running a solid, successful, and sustainable business really is in any industry. So I love books like The E-Myth, The Entrepreneur Myth, where it really evaluates, because at some point the technical founder has to step out and consider what he's doing to his culture and the abusive ways that he's his tendencies and things and how he's running off good people. And you've got to deal with real business, and at some point, it doesn't matter what kind of business you are, you've got to deal with that. So E-Myth is one. There's one that was written by Patrick Lencioni years ago, before he was Patrick Lencioni. I mean, before he written his bestsellers, he co-wrote a book. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn around and look. Yeah. I just wanted to remember the name. It's called Beyond Entrepreneurship. It's an old book. I don't even know if it's in print. You can still find copies on Amazon because I recommend it to people all the time and tell them to go to Amazon and find it. It may be a print on demand now. I don't know. But it has, like, chapter 2 is the one I recommend all the time. It is one of the most solid approaches toward building vision, purpose, and values in your company that I've ever seen. And it has absolutely, my partner Taylor and I read that years ago and realized that we had a problem in our business. And if we didn't deal with it and get on top of it really quick, we were going to end up either completely miserable and burned out in the company that we were building, or we were just going to be out of business because we had some massive leadership issues. And so it started with getting clear about our vision for the company and our purpose behind the company, the why, that we do what we do, and then building out those values that weren't just like a value statement, but something that we lived by. And I would say for me personally, values clarification, values as a study has become a lifelong pursuit of mine to help me understand, to make better decisions, to make quicker decisions, to have more clarity in the work that I'm doing and the decisions that the directions that we might head in these uncertain times. Values really do help you clarify those things and bring all that to bear. And that book was a really good one for that.
Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll stick links to that all down below as well. Carter, if anyone wants to reach out or work with you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in contact?
So our company is Future Now Marketing. You can find us online, futurenowmarketing.com. My email address, if you want to email me, is carter@futurenowmarketing.com. My social is a mess because of the merger and everything else. I mean, if you go to LinkedIn, you're still going to see Closing Commander stuff. If you go to Facebook, I'm something else. And I mean, it's just, I'm all over the place, and I got so many irons in the fire that I don't recommend trying to find me on social media. You can, and it'd be an adventure, but just email me, carter@futurenowmarketing.com. But I do want to say, my partner and I, Taylor, we've done a lot of different podcasts. We're kind of in between podcasts, but we've finally decided what our next one is going to be. And we are planning on launching that next month, and that's going to be AI for small businesses, or AI for SB. So you can go to AI4SB.com get on our mailing list so you know when we launch it, and you'll be one of the first to say you were a listener.
And if you're watching this in the future, I'm going to update the description, so I'll stick links to everything down there as well. So when you've launched the podcast, Carter, we'll update the description below so people can find it that way as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Carter, this was a pleasure, man. It was great talking to you.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. I appreciate all you've done for us and just the community you've built, man. It's really spectacular.